Oh my goodness, hold on. Listen, I know the setup don't look great. I know it doesn't look crazy. This screen is blurry. I gotta get a cloth. I gotta gather my thoughts. Welcome. I'm gonna let everybody join in. Join in. We have a huge WWDC. Some people who are not iPad Pro users all the time, they're like, oh, it was good. It was an okay event. Listen, this was huge for my iPad Pro users. We have been waiting for this for over a year. There were many doubters, okay? There were a lot of people who didn't think that Apple was going to do with the iPad Pro what they just did with the iPad Pro, okay? So we're gonna get started. Please hit the subscribe, let me see. Please hit the subscribe button, all right? Click the like button. I watched the entire Apple event. They knew, and this is, guys, I've got an even crazier take now on iPad Pro because of the layout of this event. There is a reason that they left the iPad Pro for the very end of the event. Now, this was at a time where they unleashed M2. Don't forget, M2 it could have taken up an entire event on its own, okay? I'm downloading the beta profile right now to download the new iOS with their new multi-stage, what's it called? Well, all these different, I'm gathering my thoughts, but still, the new features on iPad Pro are insane. We're going to get into them. I'm going to give a brief reaction to WWDC overall, but listen, Apple knows that the iPad Pro is the future of the device. That is why they are bringing desktop class apps, okay? It's only a matter of time. They are setting the stage, okay? So guys, get subscribed, click the bell. This is gonna be my initial WWDC reaction video, but you better believe we're gonna go in depth with tutorials and features and everything that you're gonna wanna know about the new iPad Pro. Also guys, I finally found it, the ultimate iPad Pro setup with glass trackpad, keyboard and mouse type thing, and a matte finish glass screen protector for the iPad Pro. Not paper-like, not plastic. It's pretty sick. I'm gonna do a video on that so we can get you set up with the best iPad experience for when this new iPad OS comes out. So let's talk. Let's go through some slides. We're going to get to iPad Pro. Obviously, that is what this is really about. I want to thank everybody who stuck with me through my crazy videos talking about the future of the iPad Pro. We know this all kicked off a little bit around a year ago with, let me get in the comments as well so I can make sure I'm responding to you guys. Absolutely. It started about a year ago. I talked about Apple's secret plan for the iPad Pro. Okay, how Apple knew that the iPad Pro was the ultimate device, period. Something that could transform into anything that you needed to be at any given time. It could be a tablet when you wanted it. It could be a laptop, as I just showed you, whenever you want, okay? It could be a desktop plugging into an external monitor, okay? Even though the external monitor support was atrocious at the time, I believed that they were laying the groundwork to just blow every device out of the water. I think there will be a lot of new iPad customers after seeing this and all the compelling things that the iPad Pro can now do. Okay, that video blew up on my channel. In fact, it pretty much blew up the channel. Okay, over 220,000 views, set the whole tech industry on alert. People started, kind of copying the video and doing, oh, well, this is my take on what the future of the iPad is. It seemed like a lot of the upper tier, higher tech YouTubers, they weren't very interested in an iPad that could do all the things that a Mac could do, but it was because at the time it couldn't do those things, but it was about the future of what the device would ultimately be, okay? So that video came out. I made several other videos later. Just a few months, maybe about a month ago, I made a video saying we were right. And at WWDC this year, they were going to make the biggest steps ever in bringing the Pro experience, full computer independence to the iPad Pro. We remember a while back when they made the iPhone computer independent. It was a PC-free device. You needed no computer to do things. Well, the iPad Pro in particular, with the Pro moniker, it was just teasing people that we would be able to do things that professionals would want to do when it comes to graphic design and work, when it comes to video editing, when it comes to word processing, when it comes to all the things that we love to do on Mac. the iPad Pro is capable of doing this. And this was with M1. Now, I actually thought when they announced M2 that we might have gotten the M2 iPad Pro, but I've been right before about the iPad Pro. I don't think I'm not too sure we're even going to get a new iPad Pro this year. If we are, it's going to be much later. But now we are starting to see what kind of power the M1 has in this device. Did you hear what they said? 8 different apps running simultaneously on the M1 iPad Pro when plugged into an external monitor. I got the keyboard and trackpad right here, guys. Connecting this thing to a display. I got a 4K display here. We've got reference mode in the iPad Pro now. This is ridiculous. So many different things. So let me talk about the boring stuff for a second, and then we really will dive into iPad Pro, okay? So WWDC, I want to start off and give a shout out to iOS 16. Looked like some decent improvements. They were listening to a lot of the people, their complaints about messages and all that kind of stuff. And really, I think in a nutshell, iOS 16 is a lot of little changes that add up to a really big hole. Jeffrey Shelton says, I don't think we will get iPad Pro M2. Yeah, once again, I don't think we'll be getting it this year. M2 iPad Pro is definitely coming. But we may not get it this year. But we'll have to wait and see on that. As you know, who's to say? Yes, we did it, iPad Pro, brothers and sisters. Absolutely. For real, it is disappointing for us, the iPad Pro pre-M1. Yeah, it is. But listen, if you've been watching my videos, if you guys have been subscribed, I have said time and time again, this is M processor stuff. This is Apple Silicon stuff. It just wasn't really possible on the pre-M1 iPads. Even the 2018, 2020 iPad Pro, which were incredibly powerful, Apple wants to really go all out and not have to think about, oh, well, okay, this iPad can do this much, and then we'll cut it 20% for the non-M iPads, and then anything under that, we'll cut it down this much. Regret buying iPad Pro 2020. Yes, so a little bit ago, I started suggesting that people either wait until WWDC or just go with the M1 because you knew that the current gen was going to get all the new updates, especially with M2 not being out prior to this event. So with the event coming out, you knew that all the goodies that were coming in this new iPad software, iPad OS, it was going to be for M1 and M1 only. So guys, so iOS 16 was pretty good. They talked a little bit about Apple Watch. I don't really care about that. The fitness app is coming to iPhone, so that's cool for people who want more fitness oriented stuff on iPhone. We talked about CarPlay. CarPlay Next Gen actually looks pretty dope, although we won't be seeing it anytime soon. They said late next year, so it's like, why even announce it now? Anyway, that's going to be a pain. So EP says iPad Pro M2 coming in the fall, potentially, but I wouldn't hold my breath, guys. M1 is where it's at. So if you're looking to get one now. The developer beta is available now. Guys, I'm downloading this like as we speak. Get ready for a ton of content because I'm going to be coming at you with all different kinds of videos with just initial reaction to the operating system, all the new features, all the new things that we can now do. Let me pull up the chat here so I'm actually able to respond here on the Mac Mini. Guys, I think I'm going to get rid of my Mac Mini. I've had the Mac Mini M1 for a while. They have M2 Mac Mini. I actually thought they might have announced the M2 Mac Mini alongside the M2 MacBook Pro and M2 MacBook Air because that's how they did it in the event before. When they originally announced M1, we got those devices. But I guess they didn't want to do that. So I think this guy's going to get sold away. And the main thing that was keeping me holding on to the iPad, to the Mac Mini, it was honestly external display support, which was atrocious on the iPad. It would not even fill up a full 16:9 display. So I'm like, oh, this is trash. I buy these 32-inch 4K monitors from HP, and ViewSonic sent some over. I'm actually testing a whole bunch of displays. Now this opens up a whole bunch of new content of the best monitors for the iPad Pro. But you know, you spend all this money for a gorgeous 4K display, and then you can't even take up the whole space with the iPad. So that was the reason I was holding on to the Mac Mini. But it's got the same M1 chip in it that my iPad Pro does. So in terms of video editing power and that prowess and stuff like that, they're the same. Now, what we didn't get was Final Cut Pro on the iPad Pro. What we didn't get was Logic, and that was the only disappointment. But honestly, I'm so glad at the functionality. We do have legitimate pro level apps that are available via LumaFusion and Pixelmator Pro, and even Adobe promising to bring their whole suite eventually to iPad. We've got a great Google suite, we've got great Microsoft suite, and even the Apple apps for productivity and things like that, Procreate. So we've got some serious pro power for the iPad. So with this functionality in the new iOS, I wasn't super disappointed by the lack of Final Cut. Now, yes, LumaFusion works just fine for most applications, a lot of applications, but for certain things, when you really get up into the video editing, there are some things that LumaFusion doesn't have or doesn't do as well as something like DaVinci Resolve or Final Cut. I had actually talked on Twitter, follow me on Twitter, by the way, at Chris Grant Jr. I talked a little bit early about Apple potentially acquiring Blackmagic, the maker of DaVinci Resolve. They've been working closely in the last couple years, and maybe doing something like that, bringing a Resolve to iPad Pro, but I don't know. The power comes in iOS 16. And I'll tell you what, guys, here's something I was thinking about the Pro apps and stuff like that, but I'm actually happier that they went full throttle with the operating system instead of just giving us 2 Pro apps on the current iOS 15. That would not have been that great, honestly, because as great as those apps are, if they were coming to iPad Pro, the file system was still clunky. Just the operating system as a whole just looked like, for lack of a better term, a bastardized version of iOS, just stretched out and not optimized. So now getting these features and this operating system redesign, so to speak, for the iPad Pro, I'm happier with this than if they just threw us Logic Pro and Final Cut Pro. But man, guys, I can't tell you how many, even right now, some of your favorite YouTubers are reaching out and saying, hey, yo, you were right, hey, congrats, and all this kind of stuff. But what do we do? I didn't have, when I started with that video, it wasn't that I had like all these crazy connections. I wasn't really big in the tech space at the time. I'd always been a nerd, but I wasn't that big in the YouTube tech space. But what we did is we used the philosophy, right? And that's how we were as accurate as any of the leaks and reports and all the special access that those top tech guys had. We used our minds and thought about the philosophy behind the iPad, what it could potentially be, and if that lined up with Apple's overall view for devices. I think eventually all devices will come down to one thing, and it's probably going to be a foldable slab of glass, right, that can transform into whatever you need for whatever environment you're in. And even with rumors that we've gotten about a large 20-something inch foldable, they're calling it a foldable MacBook Pro, but basically one slab of glass that folds is an iPad. And as they make iPad OS more and more sophisticated, it's going to blur the line between Mac OS. They announced Ventura today. Between Mac OS and iPad OS. And once that line becomes super blurred, people are just going to say, oh, that's just a big foldable iPad, because that's really where the device is headed. So excited. We never let up. But honesty is important, and I did announce that I was wrong about my prediction of it being at WWDC 21. I really thought that it would be a 1-2 punch in 2021 with them announcing the M1 iPad Pro, which blew everybody away, and then hitting us right with an update like this for iPad Pro, but they didn't. They let it cook for another year. I was kind of disappointed, but I'm very happy with just the sophistication of all of it. It's well thought out. Just being able to switch over apps. Once again, 8 apps at a time running on iPad connected to an external display. Again, that's all powered by M1. Even the previous versions of Apple Silicon that are in the 2020, 2018 iPad Pro, they couldn't do that. Even with the hot memory swap that they mentioned in the event, the iPad has the ability to use its actual hard drive storage as RAM, as extra RAM, up to 16 gigabytes of additional RAM given from the SSD. So if you bought your 8 gigabyte, if you bought your 16 gigabyte, you could potentially get a max of 32 gigabytes of RAM on an iPad Pro with the M1 chip. So those 8 apps running at once, it's something that really is only unlocked and really only capable to be done in something like an M1 iPad. Now, what blows me away is that you can get this in what, the $599 iPad Air. That was my biggest disappointment from the year, is that Apple released that iPad Air with the M1 chip, and for all intents and purposes it can run up to 8 apps at the same time. It can do all these things. The biggest differentiator with that, okay, so Tyron got the 2 terabyte M1 iPad Pro, and now that's paying off. You know the M1 is going to get a lot of longevity, right? So having those 2 terabytes of storage is fantastic. Now, unfortunately, if you were mentioning that because of what I said about RAM, it still does max out at 16 gigs. So having a 2 terabyte, in theory, is not going to give you any better RAM performance and things like that. But once again, with better file storage management and all those kind of things, having 2 terabytes is going to be really, really, really great. For the iPad. So guys, they have blown me away. Once again, I'm downloading the beta profile for the new iPad OS as we speak. And as soon as I get it loaded up, I'm going to spend all day, the rest of the day, just deep diving into all the features, capabilities that the M1 iPad Pro will now have in iOS 16. I'm going to download iPad OS 16. I'm going to download iOS 16 for the iPhone. I'm going to be testing them each and every day. Really, I'm going to have my first deep dive probably tomorrow morning, as soon as I can. It might even be up tonight if you want to turn on notifications and get that as soon as possible, because once again, guys, we were the first to say this in the biggest way online, that this is the direction Apple is heading with the iPad Pro. And I don't want to hear, we're not going to hear any more arguments on this. You're not going to hear anybody on Twitter or in the comment section saying, oh, this is whack, it's not happening, it'll never be Pro, it'll never have this, because it's clear more than ever right now that this is where they're going. Now, I'd heard some people say, do you guys remember the economy of scale? Oh, we're going to talk about freeform as well. That's going to be awesome. The economy of scale argument. They said, oh, iPad, there's no reason for the M1 chip. It's going to keep being a big iPhone. It's for economy of scale. Basically, if Apple can put the M1 chip in every device they make, then guess what? Apple only has to make one chip, and that saves them a lot of money before making this, that, and that, all these different chips, right? But no, it was something more than that, because it wasn't just the chip that was getting upgraded in the iPad. They put a mini LED Retina display in the iPad Pro that we saw today is being used as a reference monitor. It's so high quality with better technology than even in the $6,000 XDR Pro display. Yes, I say that because there are mini LEDs in the iPad Pro. You get some blooming, but for the most part, it's negligible. This display is for professionals, like top tier professionals, when it comes to referencing. I've got 2 mammoth 32-inch 4K displays. I got another 2 HP sent over there, Z series. I tested the studio display, all that stuff. But this iPad Pro display is the best display that I've ever used. And so using that with a Mac Mini, or even just using it by itself in LumaFusion as its own reference monitor, obviously turning off the True Tone, turning off the night mode, and getting just the pure reference level quality is going to be dope. No Final Cut on iPad. Yeah, Ozzy, I mentioned that. They didn't give us those Pro apps from the Mac, but that's okay. Right now, the third-party software is doing well to support us when it comes to video and audio production. Like I said, Google Suite, Microsoft Suite, all that stuff. They got good word processing stuff. Even Apple's iLife, iWork suite was pretty good. So I actually would have preferred that they did this with the operating system than just throw us a couple of Pro apps and say, hey, we helped, move iPad to being in a position where it can compete with the Pros. I actually now feel fully confident. Like I said, my Mac Mini is sitting right here on my desk right now. Its days are numbered. Its days are just numbered. I mean, what this iPad Pro can now do, and what it's capable of, not from the hardware point of view, because it could do that from last year with the M1 chip. But now from a software point of view, it's just so much more flexible, and it's so much more robust in terms of capability. I'll give you a quick use case example. If I'm editing a video, sometimes while I'm rendering the video, I like to make the thumbnail. Sometimes I'll make a draft thumbnail, but it's only once I've fully created the video that I understand what I want to convey in the thumbnail. So before, I would have to, a wobbly, sidecar, kind of, split screen the whole situation. It was not great. And so Mac Mini would be what I use to, edit the video, and then I'd make the thumbnail on the iPad because then I could directly interact and resize things. Great experience. But now, with the more robust, more full-featured multitasking on iPad Pro, this is something we're going to be able to do. And with the RAM that it's got, it's not like clunky. It's not like not right now. It may be clunky in the beta phase, but when this is fully fledged, when this is fully matured, this is going to be buttery smooth multitasking like you would get on a real professional display. Guys, the M2, we'll talk about that in a second because you can assume it's going to be in the iPad Pro, and then we can really see what kind of improvements we're going to get. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if they're probably already testing, because they probably already have the new M2 iPad Pro, but they're already testing iOS 16 on the M2. In fact, the M2 iPad Pro may only ever have ran iOS 16. It may not be able to use a version lower than that. iPad OS 16 more like M1 iPad update. Yes, that's exactly what it is. It's an M1 iPad update. Now, it's funny you mention that because there were some other features. I will take a look at my notes here. There were some features that are accessible by all iPads. So let's talk about those real quick. How about that weather app? Okay, there were two apps that people have been waiting for a full-fledged version from Apple for a minute, and that's the weather app, which we finally got, which looks gorgeous. And I don't know why it took so many years and so much money, probably in R&D in order to make this, but it's finally here and it looks great. And the second app was the calculator, which unfortunately we still didn't get, which is starting to be more and more embarrassing for Apple because it's like, why? What's the issue? You can't just make a calculator. Anyway, I digress. I'm happy to get weather, and I'm not in the mood to complain right now because guys, you and I and we and this tech community that we've been building, we got it right when it came to the iPad. So we have new undo send in Mail, which is really cool. It's in a lot of other third-party applications, specifically Gmail. I love being able to as soon as I hit the send button, it's like you're looking at an email and it looks perfect, and literally clicking the send button opens like your third eye and you all of a sudden see this mistake, but it's gone, and then you have to unsend. So we got that. Mark is read and unread. That's carried over from iOS 16. Reference mode, we talked about that. Beautiful display on the iPad Pro. Not so much on the iPad Air. Pretty good on the, they're pretty good displays, but really with the iPad Pro, reference mode is going to really shine. We've got live captions in FaceTime, which is really awesome. A lot of improvements to the iMessage FaceTime group where we can now share movies and all that kind of stuff in real time. Another updated feature in iPad OS, collaboration in messages. So now we can work in real time with friends and groups. Obviously with GLMG, I work with Jay Latacuente and Sydney and Zach from The Basement with Zach. We all collaborate in a family of YouTube channels on different projects and stuff like that. I'll probably be connecting with Jay a little bit later to just recap all this iPad stuff, as he's an iPad onlyist as well now. But yeah, so collaboration and iMessage is huge. We have Stage Manager, really the multitasking prayer that has been answered, because many people love the iPad, but they just wanted something similar to desktop multitasking, and Apple was able to really do that in an Apple way. Let's see. Let me answer this comment real quick. You called it, bought a 1 terabyte and 16 gigs of RAM. Because there was a time when I sold my iPad Pro. I was so disappointed in iPad Pro 2021, and like I said, it wasn't that I didn't want to use it, I couldn't use it for my current iPad, for my current editing needs or my previous editing needs. I couldn't just use iPad only, so I had to get the Mac Mini, and that was really a disappointing time. But you know what? I was like, for better or for worse, it's iPad, and so I've had iPad pretty much a month after that because I couldn't go without it. It was just such a great part of my workflow. So but absolutely, we were correct in that prediction here. So now we have passkeys, which is cool. That'll keep passwords safe. We got customizable toolbars. Let's see, are they going to keep features like card stacks? I don't think so. I mean, with Stage Manager, I don't think you're really going to need it. You might be able to pull over a side card, a card over two apps, but with the ability to just I would say the sidecar thing, not sidecar, the that weird wonky slide over card. That's the word I'm looking for. The slide over application, you'll still be able to use that, but in terms of like split screen, I think that's a thing of the past. It's a little too redundant, and it doesn't work as well as Stage Manager seems to work. So I think that's definitely going to be the go-to from now on. Don't be looking for a split screen with a slide over. It'll just be Stage Manager and potentially a slide over. Who knows? So now we also have Shared Photo Library, again brought over from iOS 16. One huge thing that I always use in my thumbnails, I always cut myself out of the background and cut the background out of the photo, and I put myself in thumbnails. Now you can do that. You can lift subject from the background right in iMessage, which is ridiculous. Does Apple Keyboard activate multitasking when connected? So no, and that's interesting. We had talked about 3 potential modes for the iPad Pro. One being the basic touch interface we're accustomed to. The second being an Apple Pencil first, with maybe smaller controls and more granular stuff because of the potential and power of the Apple Pencil. And then a third mode, which would be Pro mode, which would activate multitasking and Stage Manager and all that kind of stuff. No, it seems like you'll be able to use all that stuff without needing a keyboard in case, and I don't advise this, especially external display and all that kind of stuff. You don't want to be plugging in an external display and then still be like trying to tap on the screen and stuff like that. That wouldn't make much sense, but you can do it if you want. I just don't recommend it. So yeah, we definitely have that as well. We have live text in video, which is cool, and that was kind of something we were going to eventually see. And then Freeform. Let's talk a little bit of Freeform, which they really showed off on the iPad. This is a workspace. Again, if you're collaborating with team members or teammates and things like that, you can have this space to share ideas, high-resolution videos. You can scribble, you can add links, you can put PDFs and documents. Really, really cool. Let's see. Apple already has M1 iPad Pro from last year. I haven't. Yeah, they absolutely do. iPad Pro did not come out this year. We have not gotten an iPad Pro, and here we are in June, which is why I'm really not expecting to see iPad M2 version in a while. You know why? Because Apple would kind of be hard pressed to show us what it could do. Do you get what I'm saying? For a long time, iPad OS has held back the iPad Pro, and M1 hardware just boom to the very top. With the M2 chip, unless it's coming with new software abilities, it's not going to shine very much. And we saw the M2 performance is better. I mean, it's about 20% better in CPU, about 35% better in GPU, if I'm recalling that correctly. So there are improvements, but it's not going to show in iPad OS. I'm curious to know if it works with ultra-wide 16:19 resolutions on external display. So we know LumaFusion for my video editors already supported full screen external display to use the external display as your reference and stuff like that. In terms of external display support on the new iPad OS 16, yes, it will support full 16:9 displays. Now, when it comes into the ultra-wide 21:9 is what you meant, Ozzy. Yeah, see, that's going to remain to be seen. I've got some displays here. I've got some displays still being sent in for a big competition I'm doing. So we'll have to see on that, but I do know it's 16:9. Whoop-de-doo, there's already an M1 iPad. Yeah, it's not a celebration. Just to clarify, this is not a celebration of the M1 iPad coming out. This happened last year. We've even got the M1 Air right now. So it's not a celebration of that. It is about the fact that the iPad has been held back by software for so long. This was way before the M1 came out. This was all the way back in 2018. So it's been a good while that we've been over 4 years that we've kind of just been held back in terms of people who saw the hardware potential professionally of the iPad. And it was just, we weren't able to do it. So yes, once again, this is a celebration of software that unlocks the iPad's potential. Couldn't have said it better myself. Let's read some more. I started out with iPad Pro in 2020, then got the M1 the next year. And in that time, LumaFusion and Procreate have been amazing. And they absolutely have. They are carrying a lot of the Pro market for iPad right now. They truly are innovating in the iPad touch first market with iPad Pro, keyboard and mouse support, all that kind of stuff, shortcuts for editing, all that kind of stuff is fantastic on both Procreate, LumaFusion, Pixelmator. I've been using some softwares that were sent over to me from Steinberg, their audio editing software. I'm actually working on an EP, a music project, showing that you can actually make professional music on the iPad Pro as your sole and only device. So man, I was waiting on this because I was like, man, I want to get rid of the Mac Mini. I really just want to go iPad Pro only. So, guys, subscribe once again. You're going to want to follow this journey because I'm going to do everything from video production. I work for several different clients as well, and they have professional needs, working with some of the top people in the industry. I'm going to have to get the work done on an iPad only. I will not even have, it's not just unplugging the app Mac Mini, not just putting it in a box somewhere, it will be sold. I don't even want to be tempted. I'm going to use iPad OS. And I really think that it's capable of now with not only the external monitor support, but also the dual monitor support. It's not just going to be mirroring exactly what you've seen. And that's a big point. I'm going to get to it in a second. True professional work, true professional deadlines, 4 terabyte M2 iPad Pro. Yeah, honestly, again, it's going to be how much can the iPad OS actually showcase the capabilities of something like a 4 terabyte M2 iPad Pro. I don't think it's going to happen. In fact, my latest prediction as of this live stream is going to be we will not get iPad Pro M2 until WWDC 2023. And it's just because M2, no, because they may be on M3 by then, actually. Interesting. So yeah, we'll probably get it in the fall then. Now that I'm, this is just live, so it's off the dome. We might get it in the fall, but again, it's going to be a matter of bringing serious software upgrades because otherwise, 2018 iPad Pro. Because don't forget, even with all this new iPad Pro features and all this kind of stuff, 2018 iPad Pros are still gonna smoke 90% of applications on this software. 2020 iPad Pro, all the more. So don't feel like you're screwed if you have one of the older iPads. It's just if you're truly doing professional work. You know the struggle is real. We're trying to get this stuff done. But I'll be doing it, guys. And so subscribe because this journey is going to be documented. It will be not pretty all the time, but we're going to make it work. Once again, I've got to showcase the amazing new setup that I have with my iPad Pro now with a full keyboard and glass trackpad looking very much like a Mac. And check this out, magnetic detachable case for the iPad Pro, so I can go ahead and use it like a tablet. And then just as easy as that, reconnecting it, cutouts for the camera and everything. It's incredible. Plus the glass matte finish screen protector, not a paper-like. You can see this matte finish here, off the chain. I got this and it just never, I've never felt the need. It just fits and fulfills every question or problem that I had with iPad expandability or things like that. It's got all your Mac shortcuts and stuff like that. It looks very MacBook Pro actually, but now we get the greatness of a matte finish like we do with the Pro displays, and I think even with the Studio display now, guys. So I'm gonna doubt the beta profile for this just finished downloading. I'm gonna go dive in, guys. Keep it locked here. Content is coming. I'm even gonna do some YouTube shorts throughout the night, just showing you stuff that I'm blown away by with the new software. And then it's all coming together in a video tomorrow that is gonna be a deep dive into all the new things with the iPad Pro. So guys, I cannot thank you enough. Over 220,000 views from you guys about the future of the iPad Pro. It is all thanks to you, and we are really pushing the iPad to be all that it can be. Steve Jobs knew that this could happen. I made a video on that. This was his prediction. A lot of people didn't see it. We're seeing it. What's the name of that keyboard case? Yes, I'm gonna talk about it. It's gonna be in a video very, very, very soon. It's gonna be a full deep dive. So stay tuned for that. It's called a Doco. But we're going to talk about it, okay? So if you want that, you go ahead and look up that. Yeah, I know you guys are liking the keyboard case. It's sick. It's ridiculous. It's amazing. We're going to make a video on it. Stay tuned for that. That'll probably come out the day after tomorrow, because tomorrow we're going to do the iPad OS 16 thing, and then we're going to get you the keyboard case and set up with the glass matte finish screen protector, because it's off the chain, and I've just loved it. So thank you guys so much for watching. Hit the subscribe button if you have not already. This is the #1 place for the future of the iPad Pro. Not because we get exclusive leaks or all the stuff that these guys do, but because we fundamentally and philosophically understand Apple's goal for the iPad Pro. So thank you guys so much. Hit the like button, subscribe as we cover all things iPad Pro, Apple Talk, and Pro Audio. I'm Chris Grant Jr.